He stepped in front of flying arrows to save the alien queen. The reward was worth every scar. The alien planet, Rishar, was a place of mystery and danger. Its dense forests were alive with the hum of strange creatures, their calls echoing through the thick green foliage. The sky above was a deep, vivid purple, with two suns casting long shadows over the uneven, rocky ground. It was the perfect location for an intergalactic peace mission, though few knew that it was also a dangerous world, full of hidden threats. Nathan Pierce adjusted the straps of his armor as he stepped out of the landing craft, his boots sinking into the soft earth. He was part of a small team of diplomats and soldiers from Earth, tasked with meeting the Zarshiri, an ancient and powerful alien species. This mission had been months in the making, and Nathan had been selected because of his experience as both a soldier and a negotiator. He wasn't just here to fight if things went wrong. He was here to make sure they didn't. His team was escorted by Rashel, a tall, imposing Zarshiri officer whose deep blue skin shimmered like the ocean at night. The Zarshiri were a noble people, with a complex hierarchy and a rich history. The Queen, Queen Vera, was the heart of their civilization, revered not only as a ruler, but as a symbol of strength and wisdom. They walked through the massive, temple-like gates that led into the heart of the Zarshiri city. The architecture was unlike anything Nathan had seen before, smooth, curved structures that seemed to grow naturally from the land itself, as if the very rock and metal had been shaped by the hands of gods. There was a quiet reverence in the air, and Nathan felt the weight of centuries of tradition pressing down on him as they approached the Queen's palace. The Queen had agreed to meet with the humans in hopes of forming a peaceful alliance, something that had never been attempted before. The tension in the air was palpable, but Nathan kept his face neutral, even as his senses remained alert. He had been on dozens of missions, but something about this one felt different, more important, more delicate. The doors to the palace opened, revealing a grand hall. Queen Vera stood at the far end, her presence commanding yet graceful. She was unlike any being Nathan had ever encountered. Her features were both alien and beautiful, with long silver hair that cascaded down her back and eyes that glowed with a soft, otherworldly light. Her skin, a deep, iridescent green, shifted with the light, giving her an ethereal appearance. Nathan bowed slightly as he approached, his hand over his heart in a gesture of respect. The Queen regarded him with a cool, assessing gaze, and for a moment the room seemed to hold its breath. Despite the honor of the meeting, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Before he could dwell on it further, the door to the hall slammed shut with a force that reverberated through the room. A series of sharp, unnatural screeches filled the air, and Nathan's instincts kicked in immediately. He grabbed the nearest weapon, a plasma rifle, his eyes scanning the room for threats. Rashel and the other Zarshiri soldiers were already in defensive positions. Without warning, the palace doors were blasted open, and a group of hostile Tilkare soldiers stormed in. They were large, armored figures with jagged features and sharp, cruel weapons in their hands. Their leader, a towering creature with dark red skin and gleaming black armor, stepped forward with a wicked grin. "Queen Vera," the Tilkare leader snarled, "your reign ends today." Nathan's heart raced. The Tilkare were known for their brutality, and their aggression toward the Zarshiri had been a long-standing issue. This attack wasn't a random ambush, it was a declaration of war. In the blink of an eye, the Tilkare opened fire. Energy bolts tore through the air, sizzling and whizzing past. Nathan dropped to the ground, instinctively covering his head as the chaos erupted around him. His team returned fire, but it was clear the Tilkare were more prepared, more vicious. In the midst of the chaos, Nathan's eyes locked onto Queen Vera. She stood at the center of the room, her guards surrounding her, but they were outmatched. Nathan's heart skipped a beat as he saw the Tilkare leader raise his bow, aiming directly at her. Time seemed to slow. Nathan's body reacted before his mind could catch up. He pushed himself up and sprinted forward, leaping toward the Queen just as the arrow was released. The world seemed to collapse around him as the arrow flew through the air, its sharp point aimed at the Queen's heart. He threw himself into its path. The impact was brutal. The arrow struck him in the side, tearing through his armor like it was made of paper. Another arrow grazed his arm, the force of the impact sending him crashing to the ground. Pain exploded in his chest, and he gasped for air, struggling to stay conscious. The queen's scream echoed in his ears, but his vision blurred as the world tilted around him. The last thing Nathan saw was Queen Vera's shocked face, her eyes wide with disbelief as she knelt beside him. The blood dripped from his wounds, staining the floor beneath him. "Stay with me," she whispered, her voice trembling as she reached out to him. But the edges of his vision darkened, and Nathan's world slipped into unconsciousness. Nathan woke to a strange, humming sound that filled the air around him. His body felt heavy, as though he had been asleep for days. His eyes flickered open, but the world around him was blurry. He tried to move, but a sharp pain shot through his side, and he hissed in discomfort. He was lying on something soft, something warm. Slowly, his mind began to process the situation. He was no longer in the chaos of the palace. He was somewhere different. It took a moment for Nathan to realize that his wounds had been treated. His body, though still bruised and bloodied, was no longer in immediate danger. He blinked again, and the blurry shapes around him started to clear. He could make out the soft glow of alien lights, the smooth curves of metal and stone, and the faint sound of voices in the distance. "Easy, human," a voice said, deep and calm. Nathan turned his head toward the sound, but his vision was still weak. The figure standing beside him was tall, almost unnaturally so, with blue skin that shimmered faintly in the dim light. The alien was holding a small device in one hand, scanning his body. Rashel, the Zarshiri officer, stood over him, his expression unreadable as he worked. Nathan tried to sit up, but Rashel pressed a hand to his chest, gently but firmly. "You were lucky," Rashel said. "The Queen ordered your immediate treatment. You are alive only because of her orders." The words took a moment to sink in. Nathan's mind raced as he tried to make sense of what had happened. The arrows, the attack. The Queen, had he really thrown himself in front of her to save her life? His chest tightened as he remembered the look on her face before everything had gone dark. "How is she?" Nathan rasped, his throat dry and sore. Rashel's expression softened ever so slightly. "The Queen is fine. She was unharmed by the attack, thanks to your sacrifice." There was a pause. "She will want to speak with you soon. Rest now." Nathan tried to focus on what Rashel had said, but exhaustion quickly overtook him again. His head fell back onto the soft bed beneath him, and his body slipped back into unconsciousness. The next time Nathan awoke, the pain in his side had dulled, though it still ached with every movement. His body felt as if it had been battered and broken, but the alien healing techniques used by the Zarshiri had worked wonders. The worst of his wounds had been treated, though he could still feel the arrows lodged in his flesh, deep, searing reminders of the price he had paid. His chest, scarred from the arrows, had already begun to heal, but the damage was permanent. The scars would stay with him for the rest of his life. As he slowly sat up, a strange sense of disorientation washed over him. His surroundings were unfamiliar. The room he was in was massive, with high ceilings and strange, glowing symbols etched into the walls. The air was thick with the scent of alien herbs, calming and soothing. Across the room, Queen Vera stood near a set of strange, pulsing crystals that seemed to be a part of the healing process. She turned toward him as she felt his gaze. "Ah, you're awake," she said softly, her voice as calm and measured as ever. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't wake at all." Nathan's throat was dry, but he managed to speak. "I wasn't planning on dying anytime soon." Queen Vera smiled, though it was a small, knowing smile. Her eyes, which glowed softly, were filled with something. Was it gratitude? Or perhaps something more? She stepped closer, her footsteps silent on the smooth floor. "You saved my life," she said, her voice low and sincere. "I don't know how to repay you for that. Your actions today have changed the course of history for my people." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "I didn't do it for any reward." She inclined her head slightly, as if acknowledging the truth in his words. "And yet, a reward is what I must offer. It is the way of my people. Those who give their lives for others are honored beyond measure." Nathan felt a strange sense of discomfort at her words. "I'm not looking for honor, just survival." The Queen's gaze softened. "Survival, then, it shall be, but there is more you need to know. Your actions were not only noble, but have marked you in ways you cannot yet understand. You are forever tied to my people, Nathan Pierce." He frowned, the weight of her words settling in his mind. "What do you mean?" Queen Vera paused, her expression thoughtful. "You saved me, yes, but there is more to it. By stepping in front of the arrows, you have bound yourself to the Zarshiri. We do not take such things lightly. You will not be the same human that walked into our city today." Nathan didn't know what to say to that. He had heard of ancient rituals before, of powerful bonds forged between rulers and their protectors, but he hadn't expected anything like this. "What do you expect from me?" he asked, his voice steady despite the growing sense of unease. The Queen's eyes glinted with something unreadable. "I expect you to accept the bond, to live among us as one of us. You will receive the benefits of our people's wisdom, and in return you will be bound to our survival. You will not leave this world without our help, and we will never leave you." Nathan felt his heart race as the implications of her words sunk in. He had always been a soldier, always ready to fight for survival. But this was something different, a bond. A permanent connection to the Scifi. He had no idea what it would mean, but he knew one thing for certain. His life, as he had known it, was over. Before he could respond, a sudden shout echoed through the room. The doors to the healing chamber burst open, and a small group of Scifi warriors entered, looking panicked. Rashel was among them, his expression serious. "The Tilkara are mobilizing," he said, his voice sharp. "They are gathering their forces for an attack." "They will not wait." Nathan's mind snapped into focus. "What's the plan?" Rashel didn't waste time with pleasantries. "We fight, we protect the Queen, there is no other choice." The urgency in his voice left no room for debate. Nathan felt the familiar weight of his weapon in his hands, the adrenaline already coursing through his veins. The war was far from over, and if anything, it was just beginning. The sound of distant explosions rumbled through the walls of the palace, shaking the ground beneath Nathan's feet. The Tilkara were closing in. Their forces had mobilized quickly, and it was clear that they weren't going to stop until they had captured Queen Vera and crushed the Scifi once and for all. Nathan's heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing with the weight of what had happened since his arrival on Rishar. He had thrown himself in front of the Queen to save her life, and now he was bound to the Scifi people in a way that he still didn't fully understand. There was no turning back from this bond, no escape from the promise he had made. As Rashel and the other Scifi soldiers prepared for the coming battle, Nathan couldn't help but think back to the words the Queen had spoken to him earlier. He had been marked not just by his scars, but by the very essence of the Scifi people. Whatever was coming, he would face it alongside them, whether he was ready or not. "Are you ready?" Rashel's voice cut through Nathan's thoughts. The tall Scifi officer was already fully armored, his glowing blue skin a stark contrast to the black and silver of his battle gear. Nathan nodded, tightening the straps of his own armor. The weight of it was reassuring, familiar. He had fought in countless battles before, but this felt different. The stakes were higher, the enemy more dangerous. And most of all, he wasn't just fighting for survival, he was fighting for a people who had entrusted him with their future. "We'll need to move quickly," Rashel said, his eyes scanning the horizon outside. "The Tilkara will have already breached the outer defenses. We cannot afford to lose the palace." Nathan didn't speak. He didn't need to. He knew what was at stake. The Scifi were a proud people, but they were not a warlike species. Their strength lay in their wisdom, their culture, and their ability to maintain peace. But peace had its limits. When it was broken, there was only one option left: fight to survive. As the warriors readied themselves, Queen Vera entered the room, her presence commanding. She wore her battle robes, adorned with ancient symbols of protection. The flowing fabric shimmered in the dim light, the intricate patterns shifting as she moved. Her eyes, always calm, now held a fiery intensity that Nathan had never seen before. "You will fight with us," she said, her voice steady and sure. "We are not a people who cower in the face of danger. The Tilkara believe they can break us, but they are wrong." Nathan nodded, understanding the weight of her words. There was no turning back now. The Tilkara had come to conquer, but they would not find an easy victory, not while he was standing beside the Queen. The ground shook again, more violently this time, and Nathan felt his pulse quicken. The Tilkara were getting closer. He gripped his plasma rifle tightly, ready for whatever came next. The palace doors flew open, and Rashel led the charge, his soldiers falling into formation as they made their way toward the battlefield. Nathan followed closely behind, his senses alert, his mind focused. Outside, the scene was chaotic. The Tilkara had already begun their assault, their massive war machines rolling through the gates of the palace, crushing everything in their path. The sky above was filled with the sounds of battle, plasma fire, the screech of alien war cries, and the distant explosions of grenades. It was a war zone, pure and simple. Nathan could see the enemy forces approaching, their soldiers heavily armored and armed with energy weapons that crackled with deadly force. They were unlike any soldiers Nathan had faced before. The Tilkara were ruthless, unstoppable, and they had one goal in mind, complete domination. But Nathan had something they didn't. He had the will to fight for something greater than himself. "Hold your ground," Rashel shouted as he led the charge. The Zarshiri soldiers fired their weapons, their energy blasts lighting up the battlefield. The Tilkara retaliated, their own weapons cutting through the air in deadly arcs. Nathan dove behind a large piece of rubble for cover, taking a deep breath as he steadied his weapon. His rifle fired with precision, each shot hitting its mark. The Tilkara soldiers fell one by one, their bodies crumpling to the ground as the energy blasts tore through their armor. But there were too many of them. They kept coming, wave after wave, relentless in their assault. Nathan's pulse raced as he fired again, his eyes scanning the battlefield. The Tilkara were closing in and the Zarshiri forces were being pushed back. He could see Queen Vera standing tall at the rear of the battlefield, surrounded by her personal guards. She was not afraid. Her expression was focused, her gaze locked on the chaos before her. The ground beneath Nathan's feet shook again, and he looked up just in time to see a massive Tilkara war machine rolling toward him. The machine was a towering monstrosity, bristling with weapons and firepower. Nathan's heart skipped a beat. It was a juggernaut and it was heading straight for him. He didn't hesitate. He rushed forward, his plasma rifle raised, his mind set on one thing, taking down the machine. His training kicked in as he ran toward it, firing on the move. The Tilkara soldiers tried to stop him, but Nathan was too quick, dodging their shots with ease. As he reached the war machine, he jumped onto its side, using the momentum of his leap to avoid a blast that would have torn him apart. He clung to the machine's metal exterior, his fingers finding purchase on the rough surface. He pulled a grenade from his belt and attached it to a weak point in the machine's armor. "Hope this works," he muttered under his breath as he leaped off the machine, rolling to the ground just as the explosion went off. The war machine erupted in a ball of fire, sending debris flying in all directions. Nathan shielded his eyes from the blast, the force of the explosion knocking him off his feet. For a moment, everything seemed to go quiet. The battlefield was still, the sounds of fighting momentarily drowned out by the ringing in Nathan's ears. He pushed himself to his feet, scanning the area. The Tilkara war machine had been destroyed, but the battle was far from over. There were still more enemies to fight, but Nathan wasn't done yet. He wasn't going to stop until the Tilkara had been driven from this planet. He had made a promise, not just to the Queen, but to himself. He wasn't going to let these people fall. As he moved forward, firing his rifle and cutting down enemy soldiers, Nathan's mind focused on one thing, the survival of the Zarshiri. They had taken him in, trusted him, and now it was his turn to fight for them. The bond he had formed with them was more than just a promise, it was a commitment, and he was going to see it through, no matter the cost. Queen Vera fought beside him, her strength and grace an inspiration to all. She moved with the precision of a seasoned warrior, cutting through the Tilkara forces with ease. Her presence on the battlefield was a beacon of hope, and Nathan couldn't help but admire her. The battle raged on, but Nathan was no longer just a soldier. He was a part of something greater. He was fighting for a cause that transcended the battle itself, a cause that would shape the future of the Zarshiri people, and perhaps even the galaxy. The battle had lasted for hours, and the air was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burning metal. Nathan's heart was pounding in his chest, his body battered from the relentless fighting. His armor was scorched, his plasma rifle nearly drained of energy, but he didn't stop. He couldn't, not while the Zarshiri people were still in danger. The Tilkara were relentless. Despite the damage they had taken, they kept coming, wave after wave of soldiers, war machines, and brutal weapons. Nathan's thoughts were sharp and focused, his movements automatic as he moved through the battlefield. Each blast, each enemy soldier he took down felt like a small victory, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. He scanned the battlefield for any signs of the Tilkara leadership. If he could take out their command, perhaps the rest of the soldiers would scatter. That was his hope anyway. He found the Tilkara general a few moments later, perched on top of a large, reinforced structure, shouting orders to his soldiers. The general's armor was unlike anything Nathan had seen before, dark, sleek, and deadly. A weapon of war designed to strike fear into anyone who dared face him. Without hesitation, Nathan moved in. His legs burned from exhaustion, but his determination pushed him forward. The general wasn't far now. Nathan pulled a grenade from his belt and checked the energy levels on his rifle. It was a long shot, but he had to try. If he could get close enough, the grenade would do the job. He just needed the right moment. As he approached, he took cover behind a nearby structure, watching the general carefully. The Tilkare soldiers around him were distracted, still focused on the ongoing battle. Nathan's eyes locked onto the general, his focus unshakable. The next few moments felt like they stretched on forever. Nathan's pulse quickened, his breathing steady but fast. He checked his surroundings again, no immediate threats. He took a deep breath, then dashed forward, moving swiftly and quietly. He reached the base of the structure, his feet light on the ground, his body hidden from view. He pulled the pin on the grenade and tossed it with precision. It landed at the feet of the Tilkare general, and Nathan didn't wait to see the results. He dove to the side, rolling behind a pillar for cover. There was a moment of silence before the explosion rang out, shaking the ground beneath Nathan's feet. The shockwave knocked him to the ground, but he quickly scrambled to his feet. When the smoke cleared, the Tilkare general was no longer standing. The blast had taken him down, along with most of his guards. The remaining Tilkare soldiers hesitated for a moment, confusion spreading through their ranks. They were disoriented, unsure of how to proceed without their leader. Nathan wasted no time. He sprinted toward the nearest group of Tilkare soldiers, his rifle raised and ready. The battle was far from over, but the tide had begun to turn. Without their general to lead them, the Tilkare were losing their coordination. The Scifi soldiers, emboldened by the loss of the Tilkare leader, began to push forward, gaining ground. Nathan didn't stop to watch. He kept moving, fighting, until the battle began to wind down. It wasn't just the Tilkare forces who were struggling. The Scifi had taken heavy casualties as well. He could see the wounded being pulled back to safety, the cries of the injured filling the air. The battle had taken its toll, but it wasn't over yet. The skies above were darkening, the twin suns of Rishar sinking behind the horizon. Nathan's legs felt like lead, his vision blurred from exhaustion. But through it all, he kept moving, his rifle firing, his eyes searching for any sign of weakness in the Tilkare forces. It was then that he saw her, Queen Vera, standing tall at the front of her forces. She was a beacon of strength, even in the chaos. She moved with grace and power, her energy blade flashing as she cut down enemies in her path. Her soldiers rallied behind her, their resolve unwavering as they followed her lead. Nathan's heart swelled with pride. He had never seen a leader like her. She wasn't just commanding her forces, she was leading them, fighting alongside them. She wasn't going to let her people fall. He pushed forward, making his way through the battle toward her. As he neared, he saw her glance toward him, her gaze sharp and focused. Without a word, she nodded to him, acknowledging his presence. She didn't need to say anything. She knew he was with her, and that was all that mattered. The final push came shortly after that. The Tilkare forces, now scattered and disorganized, began to retreat. It wasn't a victory yet, but it was a step in the right direction. Nathan's team and the Scifi soldiers moved together, fighting through the remaining pockets of resistance. When the last of the Tilkare forces were driven back, Nathan found himself standing beside Queen Vera. Her armor was marked with the scars of battle, her face streaked with dirt and sweat, but she stood strong. Her eyes were filled with determination, but there was something else there too, a deep, unspoken gratitude. "You've done more than I could ever ask, Nathan Pierce," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "You've saved my people, and in doing so, you've saved this planet." Nathan didn't respond immediately. He looked around at the battlefield, the carnage that surrounded them. The Tilkare had been pushed back, but the cost had been high. The Scifi had lost many of their own in the fight, yet they had survived. "I only did what I had to do," Nathan said quietly. "We all did." The Queen studied him for a moment, her eyes searching. Then she nodded as if making a decision. "You are now one of us," she said. "Your sacrifice has bound you to our people. You will never be forgotten." Nathan looked at her, the weight of her words sinking in. He had known that the moment he threw himself in front of her to save her, his life had changed. But this was something more, something deeper. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was part of the Zarshiri. There was no going back now. As the sun set over Rishar, casting long shadows over the battlefield, Nathan felt a strange sense of peace settle over him. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for the first time, he truly felt like he belonged. The journey ahead would be hard. The Tilkara would return. New threats would arise. But for now, as he stood by Queen Vera's side, Nathan knew one thing for certain. He had found a new purpose, a new family. The days following the battle were a blur for Nathan. The dust had barely settled on the battlefield, and already the city of the Zarshiri had begun the process of recovery. The Tilkara had retreated, but their defeat was not the end. Nathan could feel the tension still in the air, thick and heavy, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. The Zarshiri were a proud people, their civilization built on centuries of peace and wisdom, but war had come to them, and with it, the realization that they could not stand alone forever. Queen Vera had led them to victory, but at great cost. Many of her warriors had fallen, and the city was filled with the wounded, Zarshiri and human alike. Nathan had expected a quiet celebration, a time to honor the fallen and reflect on the victory. Instead, he found himself thrown into a whirlwind of strategy meetings, diplomatic discussions, and planning for the future. The Tilkara would not be content to simply leave. They would return, and when they did, the Zarshiri needed to be ready. It was during one of these strategy sessions that Nathan found himself once again face to face with Queen Vera. The room was large and filled with glowing crystals that hummed softly with energy. The walls were adorned with intricate carvings, telling the history of the Zarshiri and their triumphs. But today there were no celebrations, only plans for war. "Thank you for your efforts, Nathan," Vera said, her voice calm but serious. She stood at the head of the table, her hands resting on the smooth surface. "Your actions in the battle were beyond what any of us could have hoped for, but we cannot rest now. The Tilkara will return, and we must be ready." Nathan sat across from her, his expression serious. He had been in battles before, but this was different. This wasn't just about survival. It was about defending everything the Zarshiri had worked for, everything they believed in. "I'm ready," Nathan replied, his voice steady. "I'll fight with you." "We'll need more than just strength to defeat them, though. We need a strategy, something they don't expect." Vera nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "You are right. The Tilkara have brute force, but we have something they do not, a bond. Our people, human and Zarshiri alike, are united by something greater than our differences. We have strength in our unity, in our resolve." Nathan felt a pang of pride at her words. When he had first arrived on Rishar, he had been a soldier, a stranger in a foreign land. But now, after everything that had happened, he felt a sense of belonging. The scars on his body, marks of his sacrifice, were a symbol of his place among the Zarshiri. He wasn't just fighting for them anymore. He was one of them. "We'll need more than just unity to win this war," Nathan said, leaning forward. "The Tilkara are ruthless. They'll come at us with everything they've got. We need to strike before they do, disrupt their plans, and force them to play by our rules." Vera studied him for a long moment, her eyes searching as if weighing his words. Finally, she nodded. "I agree, but we cannot do this alone. We will need allies. We will need you." Nathan's brow furrowed slightly. You have an entire army at your disposal." Vera's gaze softened, but her voice remained firm. "You have something that the Zarshiri do not, a connection to the wider galaxy. You understand their ways, their tactics. You are not just a soldier. You are a bridge between our people and the rest of the universe." Nathan felt a strange weight settle over him. He had never been a leader. He had always been a soldier, someone who followed orders and fought for survival. But now, with the fate of the Zarshiri at stake, he found himself in a position of responsibility, one that he wasn't sure he was ready for. He looked at Vera, her calm expression a stark contrast to the turmoil he felt inside. "I'll do whatever it takes," Nathan said, his voice quieter now but filled with resolve. "But we'll need more than just weapons and strategy. We'll need to inspire the people. The Zarshiri need to believe in themselves again to see that they can win. They need hope." Vera smiled faintly, a glimmer of admiration in her eyes. "And you will be the one to show them that hope, Nathan Pierce. You have proven yourself time and again. You have earned the trust of my people." The weight of her words hit Nathan like a wave. He had never imagined he would be the one to inspire hope in anyone, let alone an entire civilization. But here he was, standing at the head of a rebellion, fighting not just for survival, but for the future of an entire species. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Nathan worked closely with the Zarshiri generals, strategizing their next moves. Together, they developed a plan to strike at the heart of the Tilkarez war machine, to disrupt their supply lines and cripple their ability to wage war. Nathan's experience as a soldier proved invaluable, his tactical mind coming up with plans that even the seasoned Zarshiri generals hadn't considered. He coordinated with the local resistance, humans and Zarshiri alike, preparing for a final showdown. But even as the plans were laid, a feeling of unease settled over him. The Tilkara were not an enemy that could be easily defeated. They had been relentless in their pursuit of power, and Nathan knew that no matter how prepared they were, the battle ahead would be a fight for everything. Through it all, Queen Vera remained by his side, offering wisdom and guidance. They had grown closer, their bond forged through shared experience and a mutual respect for each other. But there was more than respect now. There was something unspoken, something that hung between them, fragile but real. They had both been through the fires of war, and in a way they understood each other in ways that few could. Nathan had always been a loner, someone who kept to himself. But in this strange, alien world, he had found something he hadn't expected: family. The Zarshiri were no longer just a species he had been sent to protect. They were his people now, and he would do whatever it took to protect them. As the final battle drew near, Nathan found himself standing on a high balcony, overlooking the vast expanse of the city. The twin suns of Rishar were beginning to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the land. The air was still, but Nathan could feel the tension building, the weight of the upcoming battle pressing down on him. He wasn't sure what would happen next or if they would survive the coming storm. But he knew one thing for certain: he had made a promise to Queen Vera, to the Zarshiri, and to himself. He would fight for them. He would fight until his last breath. A soft sound behind him caused him to turn. Queen Vera stood in the doorway, her presence filling the space. She didn't speak at first, but her gaze met his, and in that moment everything felt clear. There were no more words to say, no more plans to make. The time for action had come. Together they would face whatever the Tilkarei threw at them, and together they would win, and he would fight for them with everything he had.